You are listening to Bits of Signum Creator Stories podcast. I'm your host, Angela Dalton, CEO and founder of Signum Growth. Hello, welcome back everyone to Bits of Signum Creator Stories. Eliza Yapinen, my partner, and I are so excited that we have Sylvia Cecilia Martin Aguiñaga. I'm so proud of myself.
Thank you. You did great. That was beautiful.
And she has reached a key milestone in her life. She's been working for 4 years on a game called Starstuff. Her company is Animo Games, and we're here to talk about it. So welcome, Sylvia.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. It would be wonderful to hear your background. Eliza and I have known you through Women in Gaming Zoom for many years, but we've never actually been able to hear the whole story of Sylvia and how you came to this moment in your life.
Of course. Yeah. Glad to share. Well, I'll start way back as a wee child. No, so I grew up. So my family, we owned a bodega in like a city in California. So I grew up living my life basically at the store. It's called the Corner Market. And, my dad would like make me, do some little chores. And then we had a NES system in the back. And I would that would be my reward for working at the store. We're definitely an NES N64 household. So, I started with all the classics, played Zelda, Mario, Skate or Die, Tony Hawk, GoldenEye, that kind of stuff. Good days. But the thing that was pretty interesting that I've reflected now in my adulthood was that I wasn't confident in my gamer skills at the time. And at the time, I dealt with that by bribing my older brothers to, complete all the hard parts in the games by making them sandwiches. So that was like a core memory in my lifetime. I was completely afraid to fail at that age, which is sad, right? I was 7, maybe a little younger.
But you had older brothers too, right? I'm sorry yeah. That will add the pressure.
For sure, yeah.
You had the same thing, Eliza.
Yeah, absolutely. I had 2 older brothers, and the oldest picked on the middle kid, and the middle kid picked on me. And then when I was very unlucky, both of them teamed up. But they're great. I learned a lot. I'm very tough. But yeah, I was afraid to fail. There was no room for failure. I didn't feel safe to fail. And there's a lot to unpack there. Being like a daughter of an immigrant parents, but that just feels like a different episode and maybe a different podcast. But I carried this fear of failure with me, like throughout my school days, throughout college. I went to Berkeley. I graduated in psychology and public health, nothing to do with game design, nothing to do with programming, engineering. I volunteered teaching English and traveled a bit. I went to Peru and then landed in Japan for a couple years teaching English at a high school. And it wasn't until this time that I really felt like a shift in that attitude toward failure and like maybe like a lightning and like a lift of all of that. I also went back to playing Famicom on the daily. So that was like a lovely just reintroduction to my gamer days. But yeah, there were some, long, snowy, kind of lonely winter days in Japan. I lived in rural area. So surrounded by rice fields. It was lovely, but lonely. And I decided I wanted to take some art classes. Like I just needed to make something. And I came across a book called Processing, and it's a programming language for visual artists. That's like the tagline. And I devoured it. I devoured that book. I completed a bunch of exercises. I felt motivated to figuring things out because there was like a project that was the goal of my learning. And then I realized that that's what it took for me to be motivated enough to learn something new, try something on my own. I didn't feel pressure from an institution or my family or anyone else. And yeah, I was just making music sequencers and generating art with this hardware that I had laying around. And it was a very fun time. And it felt like I was creating magic, creating something from scratch. So this idea kind of guided me in my future career moves, honestly. Like everything after that point was very much focused on how I could meld my hobby life with my career life, which I feel is like a pretty cool skill to have and always like at the forefront of what I'm looking for in work. I witnessed myself gaining a lot of confidence. I wanted to share what I was creating with people. And this led me to like, okay, like, what do I really want to do? What do I want to impart in this world? And it's creating safe places to fail and, allowing specifically at the time youth, but people to easily explore, kind of tap into that like beginner's mindset where you are curious and you like are asking questions just like a child, just tapping into that inner kid. So my career path after Japan focused on basically things I was too afraid to do when I was younger. So I had like a renaissance of childhood in my 20s and still now. So, I got into robotics, coding, electrical engineering. All of these positions that I took after Japan involved teaching in some way. I got my master's in library science. I was a huge like digital literacy advocate and did a lot of talks around California around just being a coding advocate and getting coding into libraries. And then
were you coding games during this time, or were you
so I was mostly I was mostly really into music and art at the time. So I would have like I would just do a bunch of mini experiments. And then I got more into game design and started taking Unity like tutorials a bit after that when I started working at this coding education nonprofit, and then learning more about learning design and game design. And that's kind of where, I had been working on a side project called Melita, which was about a monarch butterfly and their journey to Mexico and back to Canada. So it was kind of like a mini game. So yeah, I had a bunch of projects like that. I also have always wanted to be a children's book author. So I dabbled a lot on like, how can I make this book idea into like a digital book idea? Because that seems easier to create as far as like manufacturing. Yeah. So yeah, I basically turned my hobby fully into a career when I started working at a nonprofit that was teaching programming so training teachers and also teaching coding to kids in Los Angeles. And, this nonprofit was like all about like creating high quality digital experiences for like creative expression and learning to program. And I started there early on. I created programs, I led programs, I taught, trained a bunch of teachers. And then at the end of my time there, I was a co-creative director with my husband, who you can see in the back, who is also our co-founder of a studio. And we, co-creative directed a new experimental curriculum for the classroom, which was basically creating a puzzle game for the classroom that taught coding. I went really deep in this time, and still now, like very deep into learning and game design. I always had 2 books by my side and like on my desk, and those were Learning by Design by James Paul G. So like learning as game machines, and then the other was by Tina Nguyen, Games as Arts Agency as Art, I think is the title. And it really opened me up to this idea of like games as spaces to, that will always welcome your imagination, will always welcome your stories and your desire to connect with others, whether that's in person or online. And it like captivated me. It just was all encompassing. And basically the thing that was most captivating was this idea that like how a game developer doesn't just build an environment and tell a story. They like sculpt temporary agency for you to occupy. Like they literally curate your motivations. They're able to just completely submerge you into a different identity for short periods of time. And that's super beautiful considering like all of the different worlds we could create. And yeah, the dream is that, enough practice in a particular agency and, say inhabiting like the world of a tiny alien named Miha who has the problem, has to problem solve their way through a star factory. Like could actually transcend the game space and like affect the way you think about hard problems and how you tackle hard problems in the real world. And that kind of like transference, if positive, obviously, is like the ultimate goal, right? Like that is the joy that I receive from game design. Yeah. And then, after this nonprofit, it was super successful. We're like, wow, like kids in the classroom games, it makes so much sense. Like this is what needs to happen. And then it just led us to creating Animo Games and our first game, Starstuff, which is a programming puzzler. So that's how that all connected.
I love this idea of temporary agency and the idea that you're giving a space for a kid to, or, an adult or whomever, to inhabit this temporary space where they can tackle really difficult problems like programming a game themselves. Is that kind of the thought process? Can you talk a little bit about what a kid might be going through in the game?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about Starstuff, just for context. So it's a game about programming, but it's also a game about puzzling alongside programs. So the thing that we're doing uniquely, and it's really cool because now that we've launched, we're like, okay, this is objectively good. Like this is like other people are saying, are confirming this and this goal of ours. So what we're doing is we're involving the player as well in the game. So you have so kind of think of like the fun of traversing a puzzle room, like in Portal, meets like a really easy to use coding interface, like you'll see in like Human Resource Machine. It's just like it's fun to use. It's like visual coding. So this like mix of bot programming and real-time interaction is really a fresh take, and it feels kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine that you can manipulate yourself. You're gaining confidence in like the agency you have to easily experiment in like this, like what I like to call like a little cosmic playground we've set up for you, because we have mechanics that are coming in. They're coming in at like, fresh mechanics. We're like keeping things interesting. You're practicing breaking things down, big problems down step by step. And the hope is that we're creating a system where planning and live execution is really like seamlessly blended in one go. And you're always rewarded for thinking and learning, but you're like never punished for making mistakes. So as you play, the hope is that you feel comforted in trying new things. Like, for example, in this long process of game design and designing this game in particular, I was the guinea pig for a lot of the puzzles. And I will tell you, the puzzles were way harder than they are in the game at one point. And I was still, like that kind of performance anxiety that I had as a child doesn't really go away fully as an adult. Like I still have it, but I do truly think being the guinea pig for all of these puzzles and like having Daniel and our other co-founder over my shoulder watching me play as they should, because I'm play testing, it like numbed me to like, oh yeah, like what are the questions I could ask myself, rather than like, oh my God, who's looking at me? What are they thinking about me? I'm so dumb.
I'm not going to be able to figure it out. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm not going to think. So, because like once that line of thinking gets into your head and your body, like your body literally physically tenses up, and like you can't think like that.
I 100% relate with you, Sylvia. I actually am a poor tester because I have that happen to me. Like, I mean, like I don't do well on tests. I've always, because I just lock up. And it's almost like this, I'm thinking like, am I thinking this right? What are they thinking? Like I'm over analyzing then suddenly everything that's going on. But as a designer now, and, as a person who created these games, now that you're seeing people play it, and, of course, you being the original tester, I don't know if you've seen this meme about like UX design. This is what the UX designer, has designed. And then what everybody does is like destroys what you designed. What has actually been like, what is there some interesting things that have popped up now for you when you're looking through the game, and like are the experiences of the players that have surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that I am like very happy to see, because so it's all very fresh, right? Like there have been streamers streaming our game for the last 4 years, but like we just launched on Friday, so I've spent so much time just watching streamers, and it's like so fun. But I'm so surprised at like, oh wow, like we really did create an environment where people want to stick around, which is like incredible, because I feel like personally as a puzzle gamer, I love puzzle games, but like I could only take so much. like my brain hurts, and then I need to like take a break, which is very valid. But I think what we did have done really well is crafted like that with the zone of proximal development, like really kind of like pinpointed problems that like feel good and like feel like an itch that you want to scratch, but they feel also like they can be like people can figure it out. Like it's never an impossible problem. It's always interesting. Like that is something we talked about a lot during development. Like, all right, let's not talk about difficulty. Let's talk about interest. And that's kind of how hopefully it seems as we've broadened how many people can feel good about tackling certain problems. So like people want to stay in the game. Like with the narrative and the art, the narrative is light, but it gives like there are some heavy takeaways there. And I like, as the writer, I love to, sprinkle in little bits of wisdom here and there that I've learned along the way, and just like little reminders for the player that like they're on the right track, or like maybe they need a break, or so I think we've set up narrative elements in the game. For example, like there's a bulletin board you could check out in every zone that give that player the brain break that they need, so that they could go ahead and continue puzzling. There are like little bean bags, which I call squish pods, in the world that you could just relax in. And I love stuff like that in games, like just things that you could do for no reason.
I love the term squish pod.
That's amazing. I love saying squish pod. Yeah, there's like a vending.
The game is beautiful, by the way. The game is really beautiful. It's really appealing. I can completely, see myself playing this with my kids. My son is, in his teens, but he's actually starting to code in Roblox. And my daughter is like massively into all of Nintendo, space. And I could, Kirby and Mario and all of that. Yeah. And she will play regardless of the fact that she can't read the RPGs. She just motors through anyway, watching YouTube. So you have to share me some links of some of these streamers as well after this, so I can.
Will do.
So that she can start playing as well by herself, because she doesn't like hand holding.
Yeah, and that's super interesting, because I think like we've developed this game this is a game that is for, it's a challenging programming puzzle game, but it's for puzzle gamers, but it's also the type of game where it's like the aesthetic is going to appeal to younger audiences as well. And we see that there's really a lot of potential for playing this alongside, a guardian or anyone older, but also just like the intuitive like mechanics and like the UI, like all of like the polish that we really worked hard putting into like in production. It makes things, it's not like Zachtronics games are really awesome, but like you put a 7-year-old in front of a Zachtronics game and like that's going to be a struggle. Whereas I think our game will it's intuitive enough to try like at least some of the easier puzzles. It does get more complex as we get into conditionals and loops and like how they interact with each other, but it's definitely something where we could also, a lot of players have called it, so it's a single player game, but you're working with bots, right? So it feels kind of like a co-op game where like the bot is the other player, which is really interesting. So it's like a cobot. We call it a cobot game.
Cobot.
Yeah.
Cobot game on squish pods. I love it.
Yeah. So it's hopefully what the idea there was to create a little bit of some options for people to play together too. So maybe I did a lot. I talked to a lot of parents early on, and parents did mention how their kid doesn't want to play with them, or their kid will want to just like move the player and not code the bots, or vice versa. So Starstuff gives you those options and allows you to kind of play around with what you feel like doing at any given moment.
So this game was 4 years in the making, and during that time, you yourself became a parent. How did that influence the game, if it did at all? I know your own childhood was the major influencer, but how did becoming a parent yourself influence the game?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Mija, so Mija is the main character of the game, and Mija in Spanish means little daughter. So in
Little
our
daughter,
case,
yeah.
yeah, in our case, it's little Starling. It's that inner child in you, really, right? Because I really wanted to focus on a character that has that beginner's mind and is like has that ability in themselves to continue. And so Mija kind of turned into my son, right? So like that Mija it's kind of like any child, any inner child and any child. So, whereas before when I was not a mother yet, I was very much so thinking inward, right? And remembering a lot of my past experiences. Now after having my son, and also being pregnant with my second, it's just like think I think about their future, and I'm just like this is, I'm proud of as I developed, like what am I going to be, what do I want to create that I will be proud to show my kids and like excited to show my kids. I unfortunately have to wait 8 years to play this game with my kids. By that time, yeah, we'll see
Yeah, so
what's up.
what's next then? What are you going to be working on in the next 8 years that, do you have some future plans here, for, I guess giving games to this beautiful next generation?
Yes, yeah. So, we've just launched, so I'm very much so in marketing mode and tapping into just everything I could do to get more eyes on Starstuff. But yeah, we want to, we're getting the team together. We're playing a bunch of games, which we haven't had time to do in the last 4 years. So we're kind of just tapping back into that inner kid in us. We're talking a lot about, revisiting past discussions about the next type of game we want to make. We always want to be making puzzle games. We always want to make, these whimsical worlds that, you can, whether you are a kid or an adult, just explore and find whimsy in. Yeah, so we're on the hunt to just like not start from scratch, but like basically hop back into the iteration process, which the initiation process and prototyping, which is like very exciting because that is my favorite part. I was looking into the archive of Starstuff and just finding all of the notes and silly ideas of the world and characters, and just seeing what it came out to. It's exciting to think about the next one.
Are you going to maybe release an art book on that, a digital art book? Or, since you talked about wanting to make children's book and these things, I mean,
Children's
I
book,
think,
yeah.
yeah, is there now maybe a point where you would do a little iteration, which is like a small condensed little children's book about this and maybe an art book about your journey?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's like a great idea. I'm going to credit you with the idea because yeah, I would love to. Because, I just got a text from my friend who was like, hey, do you have time to talk to my friend's son? He's 7. And he has to interview a gamer or a game designer for school. Because he's going to start doing a project. And I was like, yes, like that. I love that stuff. And it's actually something when we want to, shift into talking about challenges that we've experienced. Like personally, a challenge I experienced throughout these years is the disconnect between like the isolation, really, if I'm being blunt, the disconnect I've had with going from direct service, like literally talking to teachers, talking to kids every day, just like being in it, to, creating a game in a small team where everyone has their own craft and, dives deep. So I've always had it top of mind for my own mental health to reach out to stay connected with the nonprofits in that we've worked at, try to seek out opportunities to talk to kids about game design, play testing is a joy always, because I get to like see people play the game. So yeah, I think a art book for, for kids to like, to, go full circle, where like if I received that art book as a kid, like that would have been amazing. I would have just been like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. I love that. I love, again, the idea of temporary agency is going to stick with me. Even with my own kids, I think that is it's a really great, kind of a goal for anybody to have with their kids, to create a space where they can fail and feel comfortable failing, and, and kind of get up, dust yourself off, and dive back into even, increasingly difficult problems, right? I mean, because that really is how we attack things in real life. And I also love this, the characters and the art book idea, Eliza, because the characters are so cute. I mean, especially the main character, but it's just such a beautiful game with appealing colors. The color scheme is also cute.
Yeah, we worked with back in, for I think 2 years at the beginning, Patrick Grant was our main artist, and he's amazing. And like working with him and I kind of coming together and just like chatting about what this world, like what are the goals, like everything had to be round in the world. We wanted it to feel like a playground. Like all of that is very intentional, and I'm really happy to hear it comes across.
It definitely does.
Definitely.
It's very, very engaging. Yeah. So, so your Twitter handle is Animo Games underscore, right?
That's right.
ANIMO Games underscore. Is that the best place to find you? Or would you like to give guests kind of some direction on where to find you and your game?
Yeah. So that is a place I'm at every day. So I will see any notification there. We also have, I'm everywhere. I'm on Instagram with Animo _games. Actually, you know what? Animo _games is our TikTok. Animo Games is our Instagram. Everything. It's like the branding faux pas. It's like everything is different. If you want to,
it happens to everyone. It happens to literally everyone. Don't worry.
Right. Join our Discord, please, if like you want like very direct contact and conversation with all of the team. It's small, but people are coming in. It's popping right now. Yeah, and my email as well, info@Animo Games. It's all connected to me. I am the community manager, marketing person, wearing all hats.
CEO, founder.
Yes. Doing the co-founding thing.
Great. Well, Sylvia, thank you so much for coming on to Bits of Signum Creator Stories. It was so wonderful to have you here. And we would love to do a follow-up call at some point so we can, kind of hear how it's going and hear more about this art book.
Yes.
And
it's happening.
And future projects in gaming.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia.